Okay, well, good afternoon, Geoffrey.
Hello,
Thank you very much for bringing your machine, your Supermax here to show us and talk about. Perhaps you could, for a start, just give us a little bit of an idea how Wox Agri Services have evolved, and just briefly, where you've got your experience from, where you've got your farmer involvement from.
Yeah, so we started with the Supermax back in 2012 after the horrendous wet autumn. Moved into 2013 and sold quite a few machines at the Llama show, and it was quite clear that the product had some mileage in it. And then where we are today, 10 years later now, we've got it as a fully fledged drill. So today we've got the 5-row machine. We also do a 7-row machine, 12.5 centimetre spacings, a double leaf helper for the spring retention on the tine, and our own design of coal to boot, which we've a European patent on the lock washer part of it.
So it's very much more than a springtime cultivator. It strikes me as being a very flexible bit of kit you can use for a lot of operations these days that are suitable for farms that are moving down to reduced till.
Very much so. The direction tillage has been steered by the powers that be, wanting to establish legumes, SFI, herbal mixes, etc. The machine is very, very well suited to all of those applications. And I see even more development with the product. We're running a 3, 5, 6 and 7 metres, but moving to 9, 10 and 12 is going to be feasible.
And if we maybe start with the principle of using it as a starting point, as a straw rake behind the combine, that would be a reasonable option?
Absolutely. The beauty of the machine, you've got so many adjustment features on it. Starting at the front, you can alter the gauge wheels by a centimetre at a time. The rear roller can take the full weight of the machine. When conditions are perfect, you'd keep both. The slotted top link allows the machine to contour and follow the ground contours to work very, very shallow for seeding cover crops, grass seeds, legumes, etc. And if you wish, you could take the gauge wheels off and rely on the roller for your depth control. Or if it becomes very wet, you can take the roller off and rely on the gauge wheels for your depth control.
Okay. So a range of conditions suitable for even conditions we've had just lately then. So that's adding to the flexibility of it. And then if you can build into that, as you have done, a seeding operation, then really it forms a flexible starting point if a farmer is looking to move down a line of reduced till. Maybe even if they were going to embrace a disc-based drill, this would basically suffice the time bit then.
Absolutely, and you're able to work with both systems and the weather patterns that we're seeing for early or late drilling and wet weather drilling, which is an awful thing to have to say, but it does happen, and we need that flexibility. And the drill element is great, but then if we want to use it as a cultivator to help the disc drill to dry the ground out, to present it for that to work properly, then we're able to do that.
So thinking all the way through the various options, let's start with straw raking then. So clearly a conventional straw rake can sometimes be a little bit tricky to set absolutely on point, very precise with depth, but here you're not relying on anything to control depth, tine related, angle wise. It's just the rollers and the wheels. So that as you say, that allows pretty precise adjustment.
Very, very much so. So you put the gauge wheels into position, and if you were running the machine without the roller, you would have either a single or a double harrow, and then you translocate all of the weight onto the rear of the machine and let it float on the top link. So working at an angle or in controlled traffic allows you to have exemplary control of the machine.
Yep, good. And then the tine itself as a very shallow raking type tine, I guess is functional for that, but then you can also then go reasonably deeper to put in seeds and to do a normal surface tillage.
Absolutely. You could pull this into 3 inches comfortably to put beans in, or 4 inches, as long as you've got the horsepower and the soil's in conditions such that the tine will work there. It may be that you have to use it to cultivate the soil before you do the drilling, but if the soil conditions and moisture levels are correct, then get on and drill it.
But you've still got that flexibility if, like we had in certain conditions this spring, where you needed to just open the soil up a little bit because it was so compacted by that overwinter rainfall, you could just do that as a preliminary process.
Absolutely. Because the soil had slumped so much, it was imperative to break the crust. In some cases on the heavy ground, you'd go to the field, you'd break the crust open, and within 2 inches you'd see water sealed in the profile of the soil, couldn't get through there into the drains further down, and so it was imperative to effectively open it up, let the air dry the ground out, so subsequently it would warm up and then allow you to plant the seed correctly and get best use of the fertilizer.
Good. So talk me through, I noticed you've got tungsten carbide tips on the points. It's quite a robust point, but it's got just one bolt. So talk me through how that works.
So when the unit first came out, we had a plain 6mm pressed steel point, and it was quite clear that we would have to have something more durable, so we upped the spec on that up to 8mm, and then the machines all came with one tungsten point for testing purposes for the client. So we found that there was a general move towards tungsten, and I would say now that 45 to 50% would all take tungsten from the start. However, it's quite clear that when the soil is wet, the plain point, which is slightly wider, does tend to make a slightly better job because there's not the resistance created by the soil, and it's able to vibrate better. The tungsten point is particularly good when it's dry and hard and is able to pull into the ground very easily. The tine effectively gives it a jackhammer effect and puts a lot of pressure on the soil, and the tine's able to penetrate without resistance.
That would seem to work well, because when it's dry and hard, you're going to get your most abrasion, so that's when the tungsten really comes into its own then.
Absolutely, and the key to it is that the tine is able to vibrate and move and effectively dance to move the surface soil. And when you look at the slow-mo videos of the tine and the way it reacts, you see that it's high evidence that the speed of the machine helps that vibration to get the stimulation for blackgrass chitting and movement of straw and straw residue.
And then, again going back to raking, then that vibration is quite important from a straw passage, but a spreading point of view as well.
Absolutely. And then a client who buys a machine for various applications can take the 5-row machine with the same number of tines, but it could also extend it to 7 rows, so have the same number of tines but just greater trash clearance. It's a modular build, and it allows them to alter the machine as they see whenever the season allows.
So you could start with a 5-row and stretch it in effect?
Effectively, yeah, that's it. And if you wish, you could widen it up to 7 metres also. It's just a bolt-on section. And you can start with the base machine and then fit the second harrow after that also, which allows you to get full weight carrying on the rear of the machine. We don't go currently to 7 metres with a roller, just on the tines themselves. And the boot on the coulter is our own design, and we've incorporated a single bolt fixture with locking tabs, which we successfully painted and applied the European painting to, and we've managed to position the back of the boot there so it's narrow and inside of the tine to prevent blocking and additional wearing issues.
I can see that being really important, because the last thing you want is for these things to come loose and be lost because of the cost. So it's important to have something that's really durable in there, isn't it?
Absolutely, and people always look at it and think, well, that's questionable, but we've had very, very good success with this, and we supply the washers back to Europe now, and it's prevented any tine losses which you would experience in very stony, hard, dry conditions, which we would typically see more of in Europe than we seem to here.
Good. Yeah, well, that's at least you're ticking the boxes as far as durability and simplicity then is concerned, really.
Absolutely. We've found now there's quite a few clients who've got more than one machine. We're running two, one as a drill and one as a standalone cultivator in different configurations to fit in the pattern, the weather pattern that they're working with. And also it supports other machines on the farm, and having multiple uses can make the preparation for soil for disc drills better, and also other passes.
Yeah, sounds good. So when we're thinking of the drill as a whole then, Geoffrey, you clearly got at the moment showing here you've got the front roll but also the front mounted hopper. That all basically service anything that you can put on the back, I suppose, in terms of machine width or whatever.
Absolutely. We've got no prejudice to the hopper systems used. We don't have our own hopper currently, so it allows total flexibility for the customer. And it's really important that I think that they have that flexibility. We looked from the outset about a hopper on the rear of the machine, but it wasn't really feasible. And also the balance is far better having the front tank. It allows you for greater working widths as well and better opportunities.
I can see that, because the last thing you want is an imbalance of weight centre to wing, and then it wants to be more or less as it is balanced, and the predominant weight then is
absolutely
balanced around the tractor. Now we saw when it came in, did its laps, it looked visibly quite nicely balanced on the old tractor. You could run sensibly low pressures, but you haven't got in work or raised, you've got a similar level of balance, which it's for a bit of kit of this size and the tractor the size you need is useful.
Absolutely, and the key to remember as well is that every centimetre of soil is about 150 tonnes a hectare. So every time you've got to take wheel marks out, you're using more diesel, more energy. We don't run a track wheel eradicator. It's more important to spend your money on low-profile tyres and a tyre inflation-deflation system. Get the best use of that, and then optimise your footprint length and get a better forward speed. The whole machine wants to work at speed, so you've got to get the best from your tractors, whether it be in optimum conditions or poorer conditions. And one would hope, if it's at poorer conditions, that you can make a proper job, because the input costs are too high to accept failure.
But I think that philosophy of avoiding the problem rather than trying to correct it, as far as tyre imprint goes, is also actually helped a little bit. If the farm is moving down to a more regenerative, more reduced intensity approach, then the soil becomes more supportive, so you don't get quite the extent of rutting that probably we would have done years ago when we'd been really intensive with the soil movement. So I think that supports the fact that you actually don't need anything different in those areas.
Absolutely, and one of the things we seem to lose direction of is that if we go back 100 years to our forefathers, we couldn't plough any more than 4 inches deep. So what are we trying to achieve? Question ourselves. We've got to look at soil health, and whilst I'm not a total convert to certain aspects, I do believe that if you're going to look after your soil, tread lightly in the first place. Don't make the damage and burn the cake before you start, and work with the soil so it can work with yourself, and hopefully have a long-term better result, because we didn't have that power 100 years ago. I feel that we abuse that now with those huge tractors. I'm not saying that you haven't got to alleviate compaction and such like, but certainly we can limit those issues, and using this type of machine, I think, is a step forward.
Yeah, I think prevention first, necessary cure afterwards, but that is a pathway to certainly less cost, both in the pocket and also to the soil itself. So
very much so, and the overall purchase cost and running costs are all things that you've got to consider when you're buying these type of machines.
So from that point of view, you've got a fair range here of widths that will accommodate most tractor sizes, most farm requirements, really.
Yeah.
Do you see you going You mentioned probably a little bit wider with some going forward potentially.
Yeah, so we've got a 3, 5 and 6, 7 mounted. There's a 9 metre currently waiting for delivery, and I'm sure we'll see that turned into a drill in the not too distant future. The 10 and the 12 on the trailed machines are a bit more challenging because they're folding down to 3 metre transport width, so that's going to have its own issues, full stop. So we'll see how that develops going forward.
The good thing is that it's not excessively high draft, so it can have appropriate strength, but it doesn't have to be brutally strong to resist an awful lot of impact on the soil, for put it another way.
Absolutely. One of the limiting factors of the mounted machine is obviously rear axle load, and which we've got to be very attentive to. So those are the things that we have to address, because we can address them mechanically, but legally it's almost impossible. And so yeah, we've got to work within those constraints, you know.
Yeah. No, that's well. No, and I think as far as the kit on the front is concerned, again, you're very well known now in traditional Guttler type roller. Have you got various versions of those?
Yeah, so the key to it, the front linkages of all these tractors is increasing regularly now from 3.5, 5.5, 6 tons. But of course you're wanting to carry more and more material, whether it's split tanks for grain and fertilizer. So we're very fortunate we can offer the client what we call synthetic ultra, which we've had for many, many years. And it takes a bit of getting your head around, but it's as durable as steel. It's more expensive, but the weight advantage saving in the 6 meter machine that we're looking at here is at least 400 kilos. So saving 400 kilos for fertilizer and grain is significant, keeps your tire pressure down. And by utilising the front press, you've got no weight on the tractor when you're pulling the machine, got your tyre pressure set right down, and you can make a much better resolution.
Yeah, that sounds good. So how long have you had the synthetic version?
So we started with the synthetic ultra 30 years ago, and that was on the 6 metre Kuhn power harrow and a 3 metre Kuhn power harrow, and we were sceptical to start with. We had lots of failures within the axle area, rings deteriorating, and many problems which took a long time to overcome. And I still, even today, don't know what the recipe is for the plastic, so don't ask me. But it is an absolutely brilliant product, and for the sake of spending a little bit more money on it, it's worth its worth in gold, you know.
Very interesting. No, well, yeah, I wish you luck with that. Yeah, often moulding those sort of materials, there's as much of an art as a science in that sometimes.
Yeah, and we offer the 56 centimetre, as you see, and we also offer the 50 centimetre ring, and the construction of it is very similar, but a slightly different application for certain machines. The construction's always with a single straight through axle, so it's very durable to carry weight and such like.
And the different diameters, clearly the larger one, you could afford to go slightly quicker and still do the exact right job on the soil.
Yeah, we've found over the years, obviously the diameter is quite important. The size doesn't matter, as they say, because if you think about it, comparing it with a tractor tyre, you know, you've got a long footprint, so you want the shorter footprint to be able to give you the consolidation and pressure on the ground per metre square. And running about 350 points per square metre when you're operating, and those give the consolidation that you're looking for.
Yeah, and I guess that's quite a successful roller to use behind other makes of direct drill, where you need a little bit of slot closure, a bit more crumb making sometimes.
Very much so, and there's a chap called Simon Childs who first came up with the idea of replacing the ring on the John Deere drill, and the beer bottle top, so to speak, has been very successful at closing up the slot and giving seed to soil contact, which is ultimately in any seeding operation is all you're looking for.
100%. At least you had a good starting point with the design and the shape on this machine.
Absolutely, yes, yeah. And we're very fortunate with the synthetic ultra material, particularly on the Supermax, that we offer the roller. It's only 200 kilos in weight on 3 metre section, so we can afford to push that roller right back and still have the benefits of getting the consolidation onto the machine.
Good. No, well, Geoffrey, many thanks for having a discussion with me and for pointing out all the very innovative features you've got on the machine.
Thank you very much, Philip.
Very well.